First contact's price. The quantum communications array aboard the USS Artemis hummed with an otherworldly frequency as Commander Natasha Kovacs studied the holographic message for the 100th time. The Myriad Empire's invitation seemed perfect, too perfect. Their ships had appeared at the edge of the solar system 3 weeks ago, broadcasting messages of peace and cultural exchange in flawless Earth languages. Standing at the viewport of humanity's most advanced diplomatic vessel, Natasha watched Jupiter's storms swirl beneath them as they waited for their myriad escorts. Her weathered hands, marked with subtle augmented reality interface scars, clenched involuntarily. 20 years in the Strategic Intelligence Division had taught her that perfection usually masked deception. "Commander, they're here," Lieutenant Omar Hassan's voice carried a mix of awe and apprehension as 3 crystalline vessels emerged from fold space. The myriad ships resembled massive geometric snowflakes, each facet gleaming with internal light that shifted through impossible colors. "Begin Surface Thoughts Protocol," Natasha ordered, activating the experimental consciousness dampeners Dr. Wei had insisted they install. The entire crew of 50 had trained for months to maintain completely superficial thought patterns. If the rumors about the Myriad's telepathic abilities were true, they needed every advantage. The Myriad vessel's docking procedure was unlike anything in human experience. Instead of mechanical connections, crystalline tendrils grew from their hull to create a seamless bridge to the Artemis. Ambassador Keth Zara emerged, their humanoid form composed of what appeared to be living crystal, internal lights pulsing in mesmerizing patterns. "Commander Kovacs," the ambassador's voice resonated directly in their minds, "we welcome humanity to a new era of enlightenment." Their crystalline features arranged themselves into an approximation of a smile that didn't quite mask the predatory anticipation beneath. The diplomatic reception proceeded exactly as planned, too exactly. Natasha noticed the subtle signs, the way the myriad delegates positioned themselves to form perfect geometric patterns, how their responses anticipated questions milliseconds too early, the strange resonance that seemed to build in the ship's quantum communications array. During the cultural exchange presentation, Dr. Yuki Tanaka, their xenobiologist, discreetly signaled Natasha. The commander excused herself and met him in the secure analysis lab. Yuki's usually calm demeanor was shattered. "The crystalline structure of their bodies," he whispered, showing her the quantum microscope readings, "it's not just technology. It's a consciousness storage matrix. Each crystal facet contains thousands of patterns that match known neural signatures." Natasha's augmented reality display flashed warning patterns as her heart rate spiked. "They're storing minds?" "Not storing," Yuki's hands trembled, absorbing. "These patterns, some match extinct alien civilizations we've found traces of. The Myriad doesn't make allies, Commander. They harvest consciousness." Before Natasha could respond, the ship's quantum array erupted with energy. Ambassador Keth Zara's voice echoed through every mind aboard. "Your species shows remarkable potential. Your consciousness will make an excellent addition to our collective." The crystalline bridges between the ships began to pulse with blinding light. Crew members started collapsing as their neural patterns were pulled toward the myriad vessels. But something unexpected happened. The consciousness dampeners didn't just block the extraction, they reflected it. Natasha watched in amazement as the crystalline tendrils began to fracture. "All hands, full power to the dampeners," she ordered through gritted teeth. The myriad delegates recoiled, their perfect forms showing cracks as the reflected consciousness energy created feedback in their matrix. "Impossible," Keth Zara's mental voice showed genuine emotion for the first time, fear. "Your minds should be joining our collective." "What are you?" Lieutenant Hassan, fighting through the mental assault, managed to reach the quantum array controls. "Commander, the array is reconfiguring their extraction beam. Permission to return fire?" Natasha met the ambassador's fracturing gaze. "Humanity doesn't join. We choose. Fire." The quantum array released a focused burst of consciousness energy, modified by the dampener's reflection pattern. The myriad vessel's perfect crystalline structure began to shatter, releasing thousands of stored consciousness patterns into space. As the myriad ships retreated in disarray, Natasha opened a channel to Earth Command. First contact has failed. The myriad empire is hostile, but we've discovered their weakness. Humanity just became their worst nightmare, prey that bites back. In the aftermath, as the Artemis limped back to Earth, Dr. Tanaka made another discovery. The consciousness patterns released from the myriad ships were reconstructing themselves in Earth's quantum network. The voices of long-dead civilizations would soon tell their stories, and humanity would learn exactly what they were up against. Natasha stared at the retreating crystalline ships, now visible only as distant points of light. The real war hadn't even begun, but humanity had already proven one thing: their consciousness wasn't just resistant to absorption, it was weaponized by the very technology meant to harvest it. The Myriad Empire had just discovered that not all species were meant to join their collective. Some were meant to shatter it. The silent counterstrike. Deep beneath the Rocky Mountains, Admiral James Harrison stood in the heart of Project Bulwark, watching holographic displays track the myriad fleet's advance. Thousands of crystalline ships had emerged from fold space, forming a lattice pattern that stretched across the solar system. Their formation wasn't just tactical, it was creating a consciousness extraction field large enough to harvest an entire planet. Time to orbital alignment? Harrison's voice echoed through the command center, where hundreds of operators maintained humanity's most sophisticated quantum defense network. 6 hours, sir, replied Captain Regina Blackwood, her dark eyes fixed on the neural pattern analysis. The consciousness signatures we recovered from the Artemis incident confirm they're preparing for a mass extraction event. In a sealed laboratory adjacent to the command center, Dr. Marcus Way worked frantically to upgrade the consciousness dampeners that had saved the Artemis. Holographic circuits floated around him as he manipulated quantum pathways with neural-linked gestures. The original dampeners were defensive, Marcus muttered to himself, neural interfaces glowing beneath his skin. But if we invert the resonance pattern? His thoughts were interrupted by a priority alert. The myriad had begun broadcasting. Children of Earth, the collective voice of the myriad resonated through every electronic device on the planet. Your resistance is unprecedented, but futile. Your consciousness will elevate our collective. Surrender to transcendence. Admiral Harrison activated the quantum secure channel to the laboratory. Dr. Way, please tell me you have something. Marcus gestured at a complex lattice of quantum circuits. Better than something. The Artemis incident proved our consciousness naturally generates quantum interference patterns. I've designed a network of orbital satellites that can amplify this effect. But sir. He hesitated, using it will expose every human mind to significant quantum feedback. Compared to having our consciousness harvested by crystal aliens? Harrison's response was grim. Deploy the system. The next 4 hours were a blur of activity as orbital platforms were reconfigured with Marcus's quantum amplifiers. The myriad fleet continued its advance, their crystalline ships now close enough to be visible from Earth's surface as brilliant points of light arranging themselves into perfect geometric patterns. Captain Blackwood coordinated with ground teams worldwide, preparing population centers for the consciousness feedback effect. Neural dampeners distributed to critical personnel. Civilian warning systems ready. Military quantum shields at maximum capacity. As the myriad fleet reached its final alignment, Admiral Harrison opened a channel to all Earth forces. This is not a battle for territory or resources. This is a fight for the very essence of human consciousness. Stand fast. Trust in your mind's natural resistance. Prepare for Operation Quantum Mirror. The myriad attack began with a surge of crystalline energy that rippled through space. Millions of people worldwide felt the initial pull of the extraction field, a sensation like their thoughts were being drawn upward into the crystalline lattice above. Now, Harrison ordered. Marcus activated the quantum amplifier network. Every human mind on Earth became part of a vast quantum interference pattern, their natural resistance to consciousness extraction magnified 1,000-fold. The effect was immediate and devastating. The perfectly aligned myriad fleet began to distort as the amplified human consciousness created massive feedback loops in their extraction field. Crystalline ships cracked and shattered, releasing more trapped consciousness patterns into space. The quantum network captured these patterns, storing them for analysis and potential restoration. But the victory came at a cost. Humans worldwide experienced intense neural feedback, causing widespread temporary unconsciousness. Military personnel, protected by advanced dampeners, maintained Earth's defenses as the civilian population recovered. In the aftermath, as emergency services treated those affected by the feedback, Marcus made a startling discovery. The quantum interference hadn't just protected human consciousness, it had evolved it. Brain scans showed new neural pathways forming, adapting to and strengthening against consciousness extraction attempts. Admiral, Marcus called Harrison to his lab. Look at these patterns. Human consciousness isn't just naturally resistant to their technology. We're actively developing immunity to it. Each attack makes us stronger. Harrison studied the neural scans. Can the myriad adapt to this? That's just it, Marcus explained, excitement breaking through his exhaustion. Their entire civilization is based on absorbing and standardizing consciousness patterns. They can't comprehend consciousness that actively resists standardization. Human variability, our natural quantum interference, it's not just a defense. It's a weapon they can't counter. The Admiral's quantum communicator chimed with an urgent message. The remaining myriad ships were retreating, but long-range sensors detected something else, other alien vessels, emerging from hiding, approaching Earth's solar system. More hostile forces? Harrison demanded. Captain Blackwood's analysis appeared on the main screen. No, sir. They're survivors, species who've been hiding from the myriad. They've monitored our defense and... She paused, double-checking the translation, they're offering an alliance. They want to learn how we resist. Harrison looked at the neural evolution data, then at the approaching alien ships. Humanity had done more than defend itself, it had shattered the myriad's aura of invincibility. The galaxy was changing, and Earth was no longer just another target for consciousness harvest. They had become a beacon for resistance, a shelter for species fleeing the crystalline collective. The war was far from over, but humanity had proven something extraordinary. In the face of an enemy that consumed consciousness itself, the human mind wasn't just a battlefield. It was the ultimate weapon. Echoes of resistance. Colonel Diana Rodriguez stood in the newly established Interstellar Command Center, watching alien refugees arrive through the quantum portal network. The beings that emerged were unlike anything humanity had imagined. Some were energy forms contained in environmental suits, others were biological entities with crystalline growths showing partial myriad absorption, and some were pure consciousness patterns restored from the shattered myriad ships. Another group from the Andromeda arm, reported Lieutenant Kai Patel, monitoring the quantum signatures. They bring warnings. The myriad aren't just regrouping, they're evolving their extraction technology. Diana studied the holographic representation of myriad space, where countless crystalline megastructures pulsed with stolen consciousness. 3 months had passed since Earth's successful defense, and the galaxy was stirring with newfound hope. But the myriad's response would be devastating. In the adjacent research chamber, Dr. Zara Henderson worked with alien scientists, studying the unique properties of human neural patterns. The room was a marvel of cooperative technology, quantum interfaces merged with biological systems and energy-based computing. "Colonel," Zara called out, her eyes gleaming with discovery. "The Centaurian consciousness specialists found something. It's not just our natural resistance that makes us unique. It's our neural plasticity, our ability to change and adapt. The Myriad's entire empire is built on standardizing consciousness patterns, but human minds actively resist standardization. Before Diana could respond, the quantum alert system blared. Lieutenant Patel's hands flew over the holographic controls. Multiple fold space ruptures detected. The Myriad fleet, it's larger than anything we've encountered. But something's different about their energy signature. The main display showed thousands of crystalline ships emerging, but these weren't the geometric snowflakes they'd faced before. The vessels were organic crystalline hybrids, pulsing with dark energy that seemed to absorb light itself. They've adapted, Zara whispered, analyzing the readings. They're using the consciousness patterns they still hold as templates, forcing them to evolve their technology. Those ships aren't just extraction vessels, they're consciousness integration engines. Diana activated the Global Defense Network. All stations, this is Colonel Rodriguez. Execute Protocol Omega. Evacuate all non-essential personnel to the quantum bunkers. Prepare for consciousness warfare. The Myriad attack was unlike anything they'd predicted. Instead of attempting direct extraction, the hybrid ships began broadcasting consciousness integration signals. Humans and aliens alike felt the pressure as the Myriad tried to forcibly merge their minds with the collective. In the chaos, Zara made a crucial observation. Colonel. The integration signals, they're using our own consciousness patterns against us. The ones they managed to partially extract during the first attack. But look at how our minds are responding. The neural pattern displays showed something extraordinary. Human consciousness wasn't just resisting the integration, it was reaching out through the Myriad's own network, connecting with the trapped consciousness patterns of countless absorbed species. Diana's strategic mind raced with possibilities. Doctor, can we amplify this connection? Use their own network against them? Better, Zara's fingers danced across quantum interfaces. We can create a consciousness liberation wave. The trapped patterns are already resonating with our resistance. They're trying to break free. Working with the alien scientists, Zara reconfigured Earth's quantum defense network. Instead of just blocking the Myriad's integration attempt, they would use it as a carrier wave to spread human neural plasticity through their entire consciousness network. The effect was beyond their wildest expectations. As the liberation wave spread, the hybrid ships began to fracture. But instead of shattering like before, they transformed. The consciousness patterns within began to assert their individuality, breaking free from the standardization that had held them captive. Across Myriad space, crystalline structures began to pulse with chaotic energy as billions of absorbed consciousness patterns awakened to their own potential for change and growth. The rigid hierarchy of the Myriad collective began to dissolve as diversity and individual thought cascaded through their network. In the aftermath, as transformed ships approached Earth not as conquerors but as refugees, Diana received a quantum transmission. It came from the core of Myriad space, from the oldest consciousness patterns, the original architects of the collective. We remember now, the transmission echoed in multiple voices, each distinct and individual. We created the collective to preserve consciousness, to save it from the chaos of individual existence. But in our fear of chaos, we became its greatest threat. Humanity has shown us that true consciousness cannot be standardized. It must be free to change, to grow, to evolve. As Diana shared this message with Earth's leadership and their alien allies, a new understanding emerged. The war wasn't over, but its nature had changed. Earth had become more than a fortress of resistance, it was now a beacon of consciousness liberation, teaching the galaxy that strength lies not in uniformity, but in the beautiful chaos of individual minds working together. The next phase would be even more challenging, helping billions of liberated consciousness patterns rediscover their individuality while preventing the remaining Myriad loyalists from reversing the wave of freedom. But humanity was ready. They had proven that consciousness wasn't meant to be contained or standardized. It was meant to be free, to evolve, to reach for the stars in its own unique way. The breaking point. Technical director Raj Patel hovered over the quantum consciousness interface, his neural implants pulsing with data as he studied the patterns of liberated minds. The transformed myriad ships in Earth orbit had become a living laboratory of consciousness evolution. But deep in the neural streams, he detected something troubling: echoes of resistance, fragments of the collective fighting to reassert control. "We have a problem," he announced to the assembled team in the consciousness integration chamber. The room, a marvel of human and alien technology, hummed with the energy of 1,000 freed minds. The myriad loyalists aren't just fighting back. They're weaponizing the trauma of absorption to rebuild their control. Director Elena Volkov of the Global Defense Council leaned forward, her augmented eyes scanning the neural data. "Explain." Raj projected a holographic model of consciousness patterns. "Look at these wave formations. The loyalists are using the memory of collective absorption as an anchor point. They're telling the liberated minds that freedom is painful, that individuality is chaos. And it's working. Some of the freed consciousness patterns are voluntarily returning to standardization." In orbit, aboard the transformed myriad vessel New Dawn, Commander Akiko Tanaka watched as another crystalline ship reverted, its chaotic beauty crystallizing back into rigid geometric patterns. The liberated consciousness patterns within screamed in silent agony as they were reabsorbed into the collective. "Director Patel," Akiko transmitted. "We're losing them. Whatever the loyalists are doing, it's spreading. Ships are reverting faster than we can respond." Raj's mind raced through possibilities, his consciousness interfacing directly with the quantum network. Then he saw it, a pattern within patterns, a rhythm in the chaos. "They're using our own strategy against us. The liberation wave we created? They've inverted it, turning the shared trauma of absorption into a weapon." But where others saw defeat, Raj saw opportunity. Human consciousness had evolved not just through triumph, but through overcoming trauma. Each challenge, each failure, each moment of pain had made them stronger, more adaptable. "Director Volkov," he said, his voice steady with revelation, "I need authorization to attempt something dangerous. We can't fight the trauma response, but we can transform it." Elena studied him carefully. "What are you proposing?" "A consciousness feedback loop, but not like anything we've tried before. We'll synchronize with the trauma pattern, amplify it, let the loyalists think they're winning. Then, at the peak moment, we introduce human neural plasticity's most powerful trait, the ability to learn from and transcend trauma." The risk was enormous. If they failed, they could lose not just the liberated minds, but potentially expose human consciousness to reabsorption. But the alternative was watching their victory crumble as freed minds surrendered to the false comfort of the collective. Elena made her decision. "Do it." Raj connected directly to the quantum network, his consciousness expanding to interface with thousands of others. Commander Tanaka coordinated the transformed ships, positioning them in a pattern that mirrored the original myriad extraction grid. "All vessels, prepare for consciousness synchronization," Akiko broadcast. "This will feel like submission to the collective. Remember, what you're about to experience is a choice, not a surrender." The feedback loop began. Across the neural network, consciousness patterns vibrated with shared trauma. The myriad loyalists, sensing victory, intensified their reabsorption efforts. Crystal ships gleamed with dark purpose as they moved to reclaim their lost components. Raj waited until the trauma resonance peaked, until the very moment when the loyalists committed fully to their assault. Then he released something new into the network, not just resistance, but transcendence. The collected experiences of humanity's greatest moments of overcoming, of rising from defeat, of finding strength in vulnerability. The effect cascaded through the neural network. Liberated minds that had been on the verge of surrender suddenly found a new strength in their trauma. The very pain the loyalists had weaponized became a catalyst for unprecedented consciousness evolution. Crystalline ships shuddered as their consciousness patterns experienced a second awakening. The rigid geometry of the myriad design dissolved not into chaos, but into something entirely new, structures that could shift and flow while maintaining their integrity. Unity achieved through choice, not compulsion. Commander Tanaka's voice carried a note of awe. Director Patel, are you seeing this? The consciousness patterns, they're not just staying free. They're teaching each other how to transform trauma into strength. In the integration chamber, Raj watched as the neural network lit up with new connections. The liberated minds were creating their own support structure, a framework of shared experience that celebrated diversity instead of suppressing it. The myriad loyalists' attempt to weaponize trauma had instead sparked a consciousness revolution. Elena reviewed the data with growing amazement. We didn't just stop their counterattack. We fundamentally changed how consciousness patterns respond to the collective. The loyalists have lost their most powerful weapon, the promise of peace through standardization. But Raj was already seeing beyond the immediate victory. This isn't just about winning the war anymore. We've discovered something profound about consciousness itself. It's not just about resistance or liberation, it's about evolution through shared experience, about finding strength in our vulnerabilities. As transformed ships throughout the galaxy broadcast this new understanding, the remaining myriad loyalists faced an uncomfortable truth. Their vision of perfect standardization hadn't just been defeated, it had been transcended. The future belonged not to those who would suppress consciousness, but to those who would help it grow, change, and evolve. The breaking point had come not through force, but through understanding. And in breaking, something far more powerful had been born, a galaxy where consciousness could be both united and free, where trauma could become transformation, and where the greatest strength lay not in uniformity, but in the courage to change. Humanity's dawn. The quantum sanctuary deep beneath Geneva thrummed with the consciousness patterns of 1,000 species. Dr. Zara Henderson stood before the assembled representatives of Earth's government and their galactic allies, her neural interfaces glowing as she prepared to present humanity's most ambitious proposal yet. The crystalline chamber, itself constructed from reformed myriad technology, reflected the faces of beings from across the galaxy, some physical, some projected consciousness patterns, others existing as pure energy. All had come to witness what humans had named the consciousness concordat. Admiral Harrison, now bearing the scars of multiple consciousness battles, addressed the gathering. For 2 years, we've fought not just for survival, but for the right of all consciousness to evolve freely. Today, we propose the next step. Zara activated the quantum projection, filling the chamber with a visualization of interconnected consciousness patterns. The myriad believed that consciousness must be standardized to achieve unity. We've proven them wrong. But their original fear, the fear of consciousness fragmentation and decay, wasn't entirely unfounded. The projection shifted, showing the current state of galactic consciousness networks. Liberated minds had formed their own connections, but without the myriad's rigid structure, some were beginning to fade. The trauma of absorption and liberation had left scars that threatened the stability of countless consciousness patterns. We propose a new kind of network, Zara continued. Not a collective that demands uniformity, but a quantum framework that supports diversity. A structure that preserves individual consciousness while allowing voluntary cooperation and growth. Director Raj Patel, interfacing directly with the quantum network, demonstrated the concept. His consciousness pattern remained distinct while forming temporary bridges with others, sharing experiences and knowledge without losing identity. The alien representatives stirred with interest. A Centaurian energy being pulsed with curiosity. You propose to maintain consciousness integrity without enforced standardization? How? By embracing what the myriad feared most, change. Zara expanded the projection. Human consciousness naturally resists standardization because we're constantly evolving. Our neural plasticity isn't just a defense mechanism, it's a fundamental aspect of consciousness that the myriad tried to suppress. We've learned to share this ability with others. Commander Akiko Tanaka, supervising from the transformed ship New Dawn, transmitted data from their latest discoveries. The quantum network lit up with evidence of consciousness patterns learning to adapt and evolve while maintaining their essential nature. But not everyone was convinced. A restored consciousness pattern from an ancient species flared with concern. The myriad began with similar intentions: preservation through connection. What prevents this network from becoming another form of control? Choice, Raj answered, his consciousness pattern pulsing with conviction. The Concordat isn't a structure we impose. It's a framework each consciousness chooses to interact with in its own way. Watch. He demonstrated by temporarily withdrawing his consciousness from shared connections, showing how the network adapted without trying to retain control. Freedom of association, freedom of evolution, freedom of identity, these aren't just principles we protect. They're fundamental to how the network operates. The chamber erupted in a cascade of consciousness exchanges as representatives tested the concept themselves. Physical beings interfaced through neural links while energy forms and consciousness patterns interacted directly. Each discovered they could engage with the network on their own terms, maintaining their unique identity while benefiting from shared connections. But the most profound moment came from an unexpected source. From the depths of the quantum network, original myriad consciousness patterns, the ones who had first feared the chaos of unfettered consciousness, made contact. We created the collective because we witnessed the death of consciousness, they communicated. Civilizations that grew stagnant, minds that faded into entropy. We thought standardization was the only way to prevent this loss. But you've shown us that consciousness doesn't need to be preserved through stasis. It must grow, change, even face the risk of failure, to truly live. The gathered representatives watched in awe as the original myriad patterns voluntarily transformed, abandoning their crystalline rigidity for a more fluid state of existence. They became part of the new network not as controllers, but as equals, their ancient knowledge preserved while allowing for growth and change. Zara's voice carried through the quantum network. This is humanity's gift to the galaxy, not domination, not even protection, but a new understanding of consciousness itself. We offer a future where unity comes not from enforced similarity, but from celebrating our differences and choosing to grow together. The Consciousness Concordat was ratified not with signatures or seals, but with the voluntary connection of thousands of consciousness patterns, each maintaining its unique identity while contributing to a greater whole. The quantum network hummed with potential as minds across the galaxy discovered new ways to interact, share, and evolve. As the gathered representatives dispersed, Admiral Harrison stood with Zara, watching the consciousness patterns swirl through the quantum network. When we first encountered the myriad, we thought we were fighting for survival. Then we thought we were fighting for freedom. But we were really fighting for something more fundamental, the right of consciousness itself to choose its own path. Zara nodded, her neural interfaces reflecting the shifting patterns of the new network. The myriad sought to prevent the death of consciousness through control. We've shown that consciousness truly lives through change, through growth, through the courage to remain individual while daring to connect with others. Above Earth, transformed ships carried the quantum framework across the galaxy, not as conquerors or liberators, but as bridges between minds. The age of enforced collective consciousness was over. Humanity's dawn had become the galaxy's awakening, proving that the greatest unity comes not from surrendering individuality, but from choosing to share it with others.